Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for being with us. This is the GL Events Theatre. We've had an amazing day so far of engaging content, panel sessions and all sorts. All of it has been filmed as well, so if you've been elsewhere and not been able to be on this stage, then please do go back to the website afterwards and you can watch back anything that you've missed. The last session on sustainability and accessibility, a particular great watch, so really recommend that. A couple of bits of housekeeping before I pass over to Guy. So just over my right-hand shoulder on the left-hand side of stage is a closed caption screen powered by Interprify, and that's giving closed captioning services all the way through each of the sessions today. Also on the other side there is a QR code which you can scan to access an app called Slido. That gives you the opportunity to raise any questions as we go through. Hopefully Guy has got a little bit of time at the end for us to be able to raise some questions. I will also be roaming with the microphone, so if anyone particularly wants to hear their own voice, then I can come to you and ask you questions as well. The sound will stay on through the speakers all the way through, but there are headsets on your seats as well, so feel free to use either. Sound probably slightly better through the headphones, but should be okay either way. So I think that's all the housekeeping done. Delighted to have Guy back, second time today, and third time today. And yeah, going to ask him to join us and really looking forward to this session. So thank you very much, Guy.
Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon. How you doing? Nice to see you. Third session, right? Is that you're in your third? Has anyone been into any of my other ones today? Oh no, good, freshers. That's fantastic. So my name's Guy Bigwood, and I am. Can I have my slides, please? And I am the chief change maker of the GDS movement. And 70% of our work is working with destinations. We work with about 120, 130 destinations all around the world, helping them create sustainable event and sustainable tourism strategies. And then about 30% of our work is working on regenerative event strategies and implementations. And so I'm going to kind of focus on that. I've been working in this world for about 20 years on sustainability. I was the sustainability director for MCI, which is one of the world's largest event management companies. And I've been running this consultancy for about 5 years. So I've worked on thousands of events, big ones, small ones, little ones, lots of destinations. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about me. What about you guys? I'm interested to know where you're from. So quick show of hands. Who's from a event organizer? Okay, hands up. All right, good. Who's from a venue? Good stuff. Any students? Okay, anyone looking for work? Okay, good. All right, if not, give me a call. We're desperately looking for people. We're always looking for people. We're growing a lot. So, I'm going to... Oh, actually, there was a question there, wasn't there? So, who would say that they are an expert in sustainable events? Any experts? And kind of in the middle, skilled? Okay, skilled, a couple of people there, kind of, yeah. Is that what, people starting? Who's at the starting area? Okay, good. So we're kind of in between the beginning of skilled. Right, so I'll focus on that then. So what I thought I'd share with you is a kind of an approach called Hanover that we created to kind of put a bit of process in the work that we were doing and help us explain it and help us teach it to our team, to our clients. So that's what I'm going to share today. Okay. So what is a regenerative event? So this was the definition we initially created. So it's about designing out waste and carbon emissions, getting rid of that kind of pollution, about keeping products and materials in use. Okay, so kind of fairly sustainability focused. It's about designing an inclusion, diversity, and regenerating natural systems. When we talk about regenerating systems, we're talking a lot about us as well, because we're part of nature, aren't we? So we are a natural system. So this is a very human-focused part. Regeneration, if any of you kind of study regeneration, learns a lot and leans a lot upon nature and living system design. So learning and looking at nature can teach us a lot. It's got about 4 billion years of R&D, and so you can learn a lot. And that's a whole science called biomimicry, if any of you studied that. So we learn a lot from that. And so the whole concept is, you know, a lot of us who've been working in sustainability, and saw the hands there, have been really focused on how do we stop doing harm? How do we stop our processes? How do we change our organizations to do less harm and to do less bad? And this is kind of where we got to. But with the problems we face is doing less bad is no longer good enough, right? We need to restore, rejuvenate. We need to fix the issues that we've created. Right? So it's no good just stopping carbon emissions and being net zero. We need that to be net positive, right? We need to absorb more emissions than we actually ever produce. So that's kind of one example. The same with waste, right? We need to not only stop emitting waste, we need to start using all the waste that already exists and has been created for the last 20, 30, 50, 100 years. So it's this real shift. So it's a lot about stopping being reductionist, stopping working being siloed, being much more holistic, much more jointed, much more inclusive, much more holistical. That's the kind of focus on regenerative. Another way of looking at it is this, with sustainability has been a lot about managing risks. ESG is a risk management framework, right? So it's a lot about, okay, we can stop doing all the bad stuff, but how do we generate new opportunities? So it's kind of moving from the footprint to the handprint. So a lot is around how do we do that? How do we multiply all the positive stuff? And often we forget this stuff because we get focused on this part. So it's trying to find a balance, because there is a balance. It's not saying stop doing all your sustainability stuff. No, it's not about that. It's do all the sustainability stuff 10 times more, and let's really think about the handprints. Sound good? You following me? Good. You're welcome to ask questions during this. You don't have to wait to the end if you've got a question, or you can throw it up anyway, at any time. So these are those kind of 5 principles that we hit there. And how do we, generating social impact is a key part of that. So how, from the work we do, the work you do, how do you generate that societal impact? So we kind of created a lovely infinity circle here, or loop. It's an infinity loop, isn't it? So there's 8 steps here. Of course, these steps don't go in sequence. They kind of happen all at the same time, and it's a messy world in reality, isn't it, when you're working on this stuff? But it helps us think about what are the 8 steps that we follow. So let's start with the one. So build your impact system. Any of them been to IMEX? Anyone yet? A few of you been to IMEX? So we worked for IMEX for years, and one of the things that I love about IMEX and the way they've really driven their sustainability program forward is that they've managed to create great teams. And they really think of this impact ecosystem. And, learning from nature, ecosystems, work together, they feed each other, they give nutrients to each other. And I think IMEX is a great example of that. And so when we were talking about the success of IMEX, and they've done amazing work, they're at 80% waste diversion in Frankfurt, 94% in Las Vegas. They've totally transformed how their trade shows are working. And I realized I saw this opportunity because I saw that they work like superheroes. Everyone in their team is a superhero. You have a superhero in food, and a superhero in waste, and a superhero in carbon emissions. So I did an event to bring together, these are their top suppliers. So it's made me think about how do we work with our suppliers to each unlock everyone's superpower. Because I think all of our suppliers and our supply chain and our value chain, they have different skills. So how do we bring that together? So starting to think about that when you're working as a first step. How do you build those virtual teams? And once you get the team, how do you co-create strategy? In the old days, we used to create strategies for events or our businesses like this. I'm the CEO, I'm going to start. I'm going to decide everything what we're going to do. I'm going to launch it. People won't really like it, but I'm going to tell them it's the best thing out there, and maybe they're going to accept it. Typical white man approach at the top. So that doesn't work anymore, does it? And it shouldn't work anymore. So how do we change things around? So it's a lot now about starting. How do we bring together those people with the superpowers at the start? How do we involve even more people in creating that strategy? How do then we decide together? How do we bring more democracy into what our priorities are? So that whether that's a sustainable strategy for your destination or your venue or your hotel or your events, how do we bring more democracy, democratic participation into that process? Then how, through that process, we actually champion. You've got different champions, you've got different evangelists. So how do you unlock them and then how do you implement that? So this is very much the way we work and the way we kind of coach and support events and organisers and destinations to develop strategy today. So here's an example of one we've done this for SAP. We've been working for SAP since 2014 on a global sustainable event strategy. And here we got them to really think about, or we didn't get them, we facilitated a process where the team came to realize that there's two elements of a sustainable event for them. There's one about being an exemplar, walking the talk, SAP being a leader in how they do their own operations. So on that area, that means that their events need to be zero waste and zero emissions. And so those are clear goals for them. But they also realized that they're an enabler. You know, their software, as one of the largest software companies in the world, can create the solutions to actually enable progress towards sustainability. So we realized, how do we design the events? How do we unlock this enthusiasm of the participants to become enablers? How do we catalyze that change? So that means, again, we had, have strategies for content and engagement, strategies for climate and circularity about how we motivate them. So that's just an example of a strategy, right? But always think, and I think often we stop too short. We don't join the dots between the content and the purpose of the event and the operations of the event. So this is what I'm trying to indicate here. How do you join the two together? So then we go into the kind of, the operational plan. So I'll focus on the exemplar part now. So here we look at an event, we break it down to 10 parts, and we start to look at each and every one of those. So what we're going to do in each of these areas, what are the micro steps? What are the simple actions? What are the low-hanging fruits we can start with? And then we can build up and do the more complicated stuff. I'm a big believer of this kind of concept. It's about progress and not perfection. We get lost on perfection, but progress, every little simple step moves us along that journey. So then part of that is then, step 3 is looking at our CO2 emissions, right? So what can we do to reduce our emissions? How do we decrease long distance flying or short term flying? How do we get people on trains? How do we replace stuff, right? How do we then eliminate an offset? I don't even like the word offset. How do we remove the carbon in the atmosphere at the final step? So there's a whole series of strategies that we would look at there. And then that comes into the operational phase, and you probably can't read this, but we break that across those areas. So the energy, the materials, the food, the transport, and then we have a series of steps here. I don't have time to take you through all of this, so take a photo and you can look at that later. So we would go through each of these steps and create kind of strategy of that. But as I said, we focus on the easy stuff to start with. You don't want to get a lot of people lost in the complexity when we're starting. So let's start on the simple stuff. Part of that may be around circularity. So using those principles. So we go to a beautiful venue. So here's an event I was just talking about over there called ECRS. It's a congress for ophthalmic surgeons. And we're at this beautiful venue in Milano, had fantastic recycling, they said. But look, those are the bins. They look like bloody Daleks at the bottom. Absolutely useless, terrible signage. So we worked on improving the signage. So how do we use nice, beautiful graphics to do that? But not only do that, how do we come up with a whole sponsorship program that the sponsors of the event can actually pay us more money, that covers our offsetting, covers our additional work, and they get exposure, and they're launching and enabling their own sustainability programs. As many of you know, when you start to look at circularity, you realize that it's not so simple. There's lots of different materials, and I have to say there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. So when we're starting to do that, let's get away from the ugly. So let's start to make the decisions that get away from using PVC and foam board and vinyl. There's a lovely carpet producer just here who can tell you more about that. And there's a step, we start using fiberboard. That's good, right? It's great. We can use stretch panels, some of the Ultraflex of PETs. I'm sure there's some over there, right? But then, then we start to look for the really good stuff, the eco boards and the more sustainable produced things. And it's not always black and white, is it? Sometimes when you started, sometimes where you're working, you can't find, the best solutions at the right price point. So you may have to compromise and go something that's just good for now. but don't shoot yourself in the foot about it. You know, just have that concept that we would do simple steps and we'd get better in the future. So we have to make a trade-off. We'd do that. Because making the trade-off, I think, or managing trade-off is the key skill of a sustainability professional. Because it's bloody hard, some of this. So where do we decide not to do as best as we could to be able to have some money or time or resources to then do something over here that's even better? 5, food. We all know what we should do about food. I love this little acronym, which helps us a lot. It's called FLOSS. So when we design the menus, okay, let's like the menu. We want fair food. We want local food. We want organic, sustainable, and social food, right? But again, it's not black and white. It's not all organics or all local. It's like, how do we find that middle point? Where we're going to do the trade-off on that journey? So there's a few points there. I'm a big believer in eliminating red meat from events. I think it makes a big difference. I think here's an example. So here's a big congress. Really hate it. But when you've got 15,000 people to feed in 45 minutes, you're going to have to use lunch boxes. Hate it. And lunch boxes make a lot of waste. So we came up with a really simple solution. Everything that was left over, we put at the entrance. And we just said, you know, grab all the lunch boxes that we haven't used. And we, you know, in a lunchbox there's always there's an apple left over or a juicer left over. It's messy, but we put it all over here, and you can see these were the boxes that had all been destroyed and used up, but we got rid of it all quickly. It's not the most elegant solution, but we got rid of waste very quickly. Kind of made me think of one of my favorite screw-ups is that we did you know, Congress bags, and you know the Congress bags, and they fill them full of all the crap, all the leaflets. Yeah, actually have absolutely no use. People pay a lot of money for them, and they're actually, I think, zero effective in anything. And so, by registration, we put this sign that said Congress bag recycling, and we put a big box. And the idea was at the end of the Congress, the people that didn't want their Congress bags, who normally live in the hotel room, could put them in this box, and we were going to donate them to a school. Fantastic. Isn't that great? And we got the great solution. What we didn't expect is people went to registration, got their bag, got their badge, walked up, saw this sign, and went immediately and tipped out everything that was in the Congress bag. And they hadn't even looked at it. Within about an hour, we were full of paper, of all the stuff. And that was a really insight. It pissed off our sponsors massively, but it really proved that it's absolutely no value and no use, and it's totally unsustainable. So it made us really think about how we redesigned the sponsorship program. Nothing to do with food, but it made me think about that. Generating social impact. This is a whole area and a whole approach, a strategy that it's another session and we'll go into another day. But I think, you know, how do you do things different? We were doing a big event for Booking.com. So Booking.com brings all together their staff once a year and has it's called BAM. It's a massive festival of booking staff. It's one of the most outrageous events I've ever been to. And we wanted to do it differently. So it was in Amsterdam, so we went out to the kind of, there's kind of refugee camps for people coming from Afghanistan and Syria and places like that in Iraq. And we went out to those, and we worked with the community organizations in the refugee camps there. And we realized there's a lot of brilliant architects and engineers and really talented people in those camps who don't have jobs, who don't have opportunities. And so we hired them in, and we got these teams of refugees to design all of the structures and all of the, you know, the what do you call it, the experience of BAM. And it was mind-blowing what these guys came out and built. And so, you know, the result is we got some really great, beautiful structures. 2, we gave some people who were really despondent in their lives an opportunity. They earned some money, and we made them feel part of a community. And so it's kind of made us, and 3, it kind of got everyone thinking about social impact and how we build that into Booking.com's business ethos. So how do we do that? Here's a similar type of organization in Switzerland, where we got together a team of Michelin-starred restaurants to work out how do they take in refugees into their businesses and train them up as chefs, and then bring them into events and get those new chefs working to give back. So that was an interesting one. So 7, you can't manage what you don't measure, right? We know the acronym. So we work a lot with Trace, and Malcolm, the CTO's over here. So from Isla, Trace, I believe, is the best platform in the industry at the moment for collecting data and measuring it. But having the platform is only a part of it, right? You've got to implement the processes to collect the data, to collect the right data, and that takes time. So you need to spend time and invest in your suppliers, in your clients, in your sponsors, to educate them and design the process to collect that data and then bring it in, make sure it's the right. So you need the QA processes around your data. So that takes time and energy. If it does, then you get some great data about your waste footprint, about your food footprint, about your travel footprint. So that data is what bases our decisions and guides our decisions. So it's very important. 8 is around communication. We communicate badly. 57% of destinations, only 57% of destinations talk about the sustainability strategy. 70% of hotels talk about the sustainability strategy. I think it's around less than 50% of events actually properly talk about the sustainability strategy. So we're more likely to green hush now than we are to greenwash. We all get worried about greenwashing, but it's the green hushing that scares me. Because we're not talking to people, and we kind of assume people aren't interested. Yet every survey I've done of event attendees has said, yes, they are interested to know what's happening at the event they participate in, and they expect people to be doing something about it. So, so really think about that. So this is the ECRS Congress in Vienna just a few weeks ago. This is the sustainability wall. I mean, we spend serious money on the sustainability wall. And it talks about what we do at the event. It talks about the change happening in the ophthalmic industry. We're talking about stories of the people who come to the event, what they've done since the last event. So we make it very personal, very dynamic. We build in different competitions. We have a kind of games that if they go and visit certain sustainable stands, the different stands who are doing an amazing job at sustainability, they get points. The more points they get, the more prizes they get. And so we give them nice prizes for participating in it, T-shirts and other things like that. And we make them feel part of what we call the Mission Zero, this whole campaign to work on that. So, you've got to include it into your brand experience. Here, the CEO and the president, every speech they talk about sustainability and what we're doing. It gets a bit boring in some ways. It's repetitive, but it gets into the culture, into ethos. So how do you work with your clients, your bosses, your organizations to make sure this is repeated and goes, bam, 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 it doesn't stop? How do you identify all your touch points? Where do you need to talk about sustainability? We always know it's on the website and on the app, but, where is it in the toilets? When you go into the toilet on the back of the door is the best place to have a message. Where is it at the food stands? Where can you put your notes through to educate, communicate, to engage and activate people? So that's a little bit about the journey we're talking about. I'd like to throw that open now for some questions, if anyone's got any questions. And while you think of the question, people always say to me, yeah, but it's expensive. So we've been working with SAP for years, and one event series, I did a very exhaustive economic measurement, and we took a roadshow around 6 different countries, and we managed to save 217,000 euros doing things such as renting furniture, eliminating bottled water, etc. We made 130 grand in investments. We decided to spend more on some things. But the net point is, at the end of the day, we saved 86,000 euros. That's a great example. I'm happy when we have a net zero point of view, when it's a balance. But I think we're really bad often in our industry at looking per line. Organic food's expensive, right? We can't do that. Versus looking at the bottom line and saying, I'm happy to spend a bit more there, but save here, as long as that is at 0 or even better. So, yeah, I'll leave that there. If you want to know more about this, here's the framework. You can download it in the Regenerative Revolution. There's a report we wrote about this for IMEX, and Marriott supported it. And there's my email.
Amazing. Thank you, Gary. Guy, is there any questions at all? We got 5 minutes, I think, left. Anyone got a question for Guy at all? Ah, there's one up on Slido. So there's a question that says, could you expand more on designing sponsorship programs for sustainability?
Yeah. If it's co-creation, first thing you should do is get a group of sponsors together and ask them what they're looking for, what they're interested in, and start to kind of co-create with them. I'm a massive believer in co-creating sponsorship because everyone has something different. Some sponsors want, this, some sponsors that. So I was talking to them. So we typically would have, like always, multiple levels, gold, silver, bronze, and looking what they need. Some people are really interested in climate. Some people more interested in carbon. Some people more interested in social and DEI. So I typically have, themes that are more impact related, and that allows, if I'm a Johnson & Johnson, they're really big into climate, but Zeiss are really into waste. So it allows them all to align with what works for them. But we only learned that by talking to people. So that's the typical approach I would do. For that Congress, we raise about 100 to 150,000 euros a year in sponsorship for sustainability, which pays for the offsetting and our work. So that's kind of a nice balanced approach.
Amazing, thank you. Any other questions from the floor at all?
Or anyone want to share anything? Anyone got anything to add?
Yeah.
Or a heckle?
Yeah. It's really interesting. One thing, a difference between sponsorships and something that we've been seeing more is the value-based partnerships rather than sponsorships and having that direct. Have you had that experience, or in terms of sort of setting up?
I learned that a lot with the COPs. I've organised 4 of the climate change conferences, and there's a real issue about money in a COP because you don't want to be seen to influence stuff. So you have to trade, and it was perceived as really being negative in the past, but we turned it around. I actually learned that from Bristol, doing the European Green Capital program in Bristol. And so we saw that we could go to DHL and get free postage. We can go to BMW and get 100 BMWs and get them electric cars being driven around. So depending on what their event is, there's often someone who's very open to put quite a lot, and maybe even much more value than 100 grand or 50 grand sponsorship package. So I've done a lot of that work now. It takes a lot more time and a lot more effort. So yeah, and but I like that. I actually think you get more out of that than the money. Yeah.
Amazing. Question I've got, if that's all right, is around, so a lot of the talk today has been about big industry, big companies, multinationals. The events industry is an awful lot of small kind of organisations, maybe looking for local sponsors and that kind of thing. How transferable is the stuff that you've talked about today to maybe the kind of grassroots of the event industry, outdoors, indoors, and all that sort of thing as well?
I think 100% transferable. I think, and both ways, a big congress has a great idea, can be tuned down to a small event, and a small event might have a great idea to work for a big event. So I think I'll repeat what I said before, it's about simple steps, looking at what can we do simple. If it's just, this year we're just going to source 50% of our food locally, right? That's okay. It's not perfect. It doesn't matter. That's brilliant. Next year you can go to 70%. Next year you can go to 100%, right? But don't beat yourself up for decisions you have to make because of the reality of your budget or resources or your suppliers. Just as long as you make a general progress, that's the most important thing.
Lovely, thank you. And I think that pretty much brings us to time. So, a massive thank you to Guy for coming to speak for us again today. So thank you, Guy.
Thank you.